just the beginning. And I find myself
The sounds. I'm only gonna watch a little bit of it because the sound is.
Should I turn it down a bit, or
No,
something's weird with it?
Yeah, it's not. It's okay. We'll watch a little bit. It's like a track that's missing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's because of that cable. Because it's the mini plug and there's 2 channels on it. It's stupid. It's like
All right. And yeah, the main track is
we have to-
missing, so we're just listening to the background.
we have to perfect that.
We'll wait till the guy steps in. Alright, so that part of the we're only gonna watch a piece of that. It was originally 9 minutes long, and I left every single frame in it. And I didn't know a whole lot about editing. I didn't know a whole lot about pacing. And I would bring it to film festivals, and after 9 minutes of kind of watching no storyline or no plot, there was a lot of like shifting in the seats and checking the watch, and I could sit in the background and I could kind of watch this, and I was like, okay, like this is I'm happy. I want every frame in there, but if it's going to be entertaining and if people are going to want to watch it, it's going to need to be a little shorter. So I shrunk it down to, I think the version that I have online now is 6 minutes, and I cut out a lot of the extraneous things that are really slow pieces. And but this was the first film. It was the first, it had like kind of a storyline. It had kind of an idea and a way that I wanted to go about it. What I was doing was like I said, I started painting on these old slates, and there were these 1800s schoolhouses, giant pieces of rock, and once I would get so far on one of these pieces of rock, I would put it off to the side, and then so for this film, in the end, it was a series of slates in a gallery, and then at the end was the film. So you could go in a little room at the end and watch the film, and then come out of the room and you could watch these, or then you could look at the slates again. was kind of like you could watch the process of these being made. And the film went into festivals, and I got like a little taste of like what it's like to, have films and festivals and how exciting that is. And so I shortly after this, I moved to New York. I was planning on going to New York anyway, and this was like a good time to move to New York. And I moved there, and I started going to school. Again, I started going to school for it was a computer art program, so it had to do with computer art. But then I was going to do this super convoluted project where I was like driving around the world, and I was going to be sending images to a satellite, which was then going to be sending images to a screen, and it was going to kind of be like what Google Maps is now, but Google Maps wasn't around yet, so this idea of like a continuous photograph of a place was still like an exciting idea. Now I got a photograph of basically the entire planet, which is kind of amazing. But I ended up kind of going back to this idea of animation and seeing what I could do with that. And I started playing with that more when I got there. And there was a point when I needed a studio, and I realized that I was already doing this animation stuff, and I was looking for content and things to animate. So I made like a little advertisement of me needing a studio. I posted it on YouTube. I posted it around. It was the first time that I kind of received some sort of, there's some audio to it also. Pretend like there's jazz music behind it.
I can hear it barely.
Tiny.
Should it be the New York song?
Sirens? You sing here.
Oh, this connection.
Andy, you're the dude, you know.
I'm the dude.
You're the dude. You know music. You know.
Looks like you might know what's going on too. Could be just a.
Yeah.
I put it in the. I think I put it in the right one, but.
Could be just a bad
This happened yesterday too.
What color is it? Is it like yellow, red, white, or any of those weird auxiliary chords?
I had it in the other one, but
Have it everywhere.
and it was working, but.
Yeah, maybe some of these stuff.
Well, I think we need a new. Yeah.
Well, hopefully the other ones won't be on that channel.
Yeah.
'Cause I think that's what the.
The issue is that it's.
Oh, there was.
cable.
Yeah, it's a crap cable. We need a new cable. We could do it on play it on the Casio. Yeah. Oh, there. Something's happening. Aha.
Yeah, just keep it on the right.
Yeah, keep it on the right. Yeah.
And then balance it.
Okay.
Okay. Alright, so you kind of got the idea already, though. It was a little commercial that I did for myself, and I ended up getting an awesome studio in Tribeca for 5 years. It was worth the time that I invested in. Have you ever seen that cartoon? Well, I know my name is Song.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Things that
I
come true.
On some level, I felt like I was experiencing that because here I was drawing these little things, these little doodles on the chalkboard, and and then later in life I got a studio, and then I had a place to make more animations. And that was the first, that was. So let me, and then from there I realized that I kept kind of pushing myself every time. We're going to play with color, we're going to play with sound, we're going to play with, and eventually I was like, all right, I've done these like non-narrative kind of pieces, and I wanted to try to do something narrative, something based on story, and I had this audio piece that I created for a radio broadcast. It was kind of like this American lifestyle piece, and I wanted to try to turn that. I was like, oh, I could use that audio piece and turn that into an animation. So that was. How many people have seen Prayers for Peace already? One? Okay, cool. Then Prayers for Peace was like it was played in this festival a couple of years ago, and it was my first attempt at like a narrative and a story. So let me play that one for you. This one's a more traditional piece. I did it. There was a war going on in the U.S. was at war, and I was watching the news, and there was it was like, oh, 5 died in Iraq, 2 died in Afghanistan, and now the sports. The Penguins got 7 points, and the so-and-so got 2 points, and I would watch the news, and it didn't process that those were human lives, and that those were people. So what I tried to do was kind of personalize the war, and allow people to realize that this was, in fact, these were people. These were brothers and sisters and fathers and mothers that were dying. So I made the audience that I was kind of shooting for was this middle America, mom and dad. I had my parents in mind while I was making the film because they go to the movie theater every Friday night. It's date night, and they go out to dinner, and then they go to the movies, and they watch whatever Hollywood blockbuster is going on. So for them to watch like some weird experimental chalkboard stuff, I knew that they, them or someone like them wouldn't really get to process it. So I made the shots in the beginning are really slow so that they can kind of get more involved in the story than to get tied up. I didn't want them to get like lost at any point in time. So we'll play that one. And we'll stop if you have any questions. Hopefully the sound will work because the whole thing's based on a sound piece. This morning I walked past a church with a sign out front that read, Prayers for Peace. Stretching the entire length of the church was a wrought iron fence with long, thin yellow ribbons draped across so thick that they looked like ties on a clearance rack. I noticed that some of the ribbons had names attached. As I walked down the sidewalk, I thought the ribbons must be for donors or sponsors or patrons of the church. It was one of those beautiful old stone churches on Fifth Avenue. The front of the church was long, and the ribbons were many and bright and dancing in the December wind, so they easily caught my attention. I read another name tag. This one was of a soldier. The third,
also of a soldier. That was when I realized that these must all be names of soldiers who had died in Iraq. Thus the yellow ribbons, thus the prayers for peace. I stopped. I started searching for PFC Devin J. Grella. There were thousands of ribbons. I wasn't going to be able to just randomly find his, but then I saw that they were in sort of an ad hoc alphabetical order. Greca, Gonzalez, and after a long while, Grella. A heavy cold wind blew through me, tossing the ribbons high off the fence. I don't think of him that often anymore, even though it has only been 3 years, even though someone in Iraq was just killed yesterday. Someone's son, someone's father, someone's husband, someone's friend. I miss him. I wish I could say I think of him more often than I do. I wiped the tears from my face and started walking back down Fifth Avenue, crossing through Madison Square Park. I thought immediately of the soundbite on the laptop that came and his personal belongings were returned. I thought about that sound file, guns firing in the background, his innocent 21-year-old voice, oddly more mature since he'd left for Iraq 3 months ago. An IED, or improvised explosive device, would be detonated beneath his diesel tanker days later, killing him instantly. I can remember when our family got the laptop out of his personal effects. We were in the funeral home, closed casket wrapped with a flag on the other side of the room. We all huddled around the monitor as if we were looking into the eye of an oracle that could deliver us a message from beyond the grave. There they were. Pictures of Devin and his friends, videos of soldiers in a sporting boxing match, and a sound file of him delivering a tanker of fuel across the Persian desert. We listened to it over and over. We wanted to know, to be a part of, experience what his life, a life that we all knew so well before he'd left for Iraq, was like those last few months. We knew that he was somewhere, but it wasn't until we heard the machine gun fire in the background that we realized he'd been off in a very foreign place. Maybe before that we didn't want to know. Maybe we were in denial. It definitely made it easier to sleep at night. At that moment, gathered around, listening to his voice, I tried to imagine Devin as something I'd never considered him, a soldier. I knew him as a little brother, an athlete, and a sports fanatic, a musician, slightly girl-crazed and able to spend hours gaming, but never a soldier. He'd only been there 3 months, hardly enough time to write back home. He'd only been in the Army for 6 months, and honestly, I'd never really spoken to him about it. It wasn't how I identified him. But here at the funeral were hundreds of men, dressed in uniform, straightening collars, and saying what a brave soldier my brother was. And there I was, keeping my mouth shut, for fear of dishonoring him. Take a minute to listen to the sound file, the last known recording of my brother Devin, before he was killed.
I don't know if you can hear this or not, but I'm on top of a truck right now. I'm in Nausea. And it's just crazy over here. If you can hear it in the background, we're not talking about it at all. When I first got here, there were bombs and stuff going off, and they were shooting tracer rounds right over our head. We were parked here. We were just looking for someone to drop this trailer. Sounds like it slowed down over there. I was hoping we could hear some more bombs. They were just shooting off a bunch of missiles and stuff. So right now it just sounds like a 50 cal, couple 50 cals. It's pretty much stopped it. It's really crazy over here. It's pretty exciting though. It's a big mission. I don't know, I'm just excited to be a part of it, I guess.
that one was a story that I felt like it needed to be told. I wanted to tell it. And so I made that one and started putting that out into festivals. And because the war was still going on, and it was kind of a heated debate at that point. And because I had a lot of political stuff in it. I'm one side, my parents are completely the other side. And I had kind of like some political jabs in there. And I pulled those out because I didn't feel like it was the time or the place to really get into that. And plus the country was so polarized at that time that you would watch anything or you would listen to anything and it was either right or wrong. And if you were on this side and they said one thing that didn't agree with what you were saying, then it was wrong. And you instantly turned it off and shut it down and said, no, I'm not listening to that. And that's bad, that's wrong. And it was that way with both sides. So I felt like by pulling that out, pulling the politics, my personal politics out of the film, it allowed more people to see it and watch it all the way through and engage it or relate to it on the level that they wanted to bring to, they were able to bring what they were thinking and what they were feeling. So it played in GI film festivals, which was all films about soldiers. It played in Woodstock, like the Woodstock Film Festival, which is Peace, Love, and Hippies Film Festival. So it played on both sides of the spectrum, and everybody kind of brought what they were thinking to the film, which was it's something that I really noticed. I've kept that thread throughout most of my work. And so realistically, what happened there? Oh, question.
So did that work as a wider audience viewed the film as a
Yes.
result? And how did your parents?
My parents loved it. My dad said that was the best thing they've ever done. They were really proud of they didn't mind showing it to their friends. It wasn't like it was our son done this time. It was they loved it. And honestly, it did engage audiences. There was, at the GI Film Festival, they were like, this was a great portrait of a soldier. And at at the Woodstock Film Festival, they were like, this is a horrible thing that's happening to our nation. How can we change this? So it really did, that my purpose, the goal of what I was trying to do was to personalize it. To let people know that these are humans, that these are people, that it's somebody's brother, it's somebody's father, it's somebody's sister, mother, that these are people. And then so by pulling the politics out of it, I feel like it did humanize it. It did allow people to relate to it on a human level, which was really what I was trying to do. Was just relate on a person-to-person level. And it screened in film festivals. It screened in this film festival. It screened, in hundreds of film festivals all over the planet. It was a really well received. It was a great experience for me. It was a great experience for the film. And I feel like it did what it was supposed to do. And then, I was submitting it to festivals. I was doing the bureaucratic work. It's a one-man show, So I had a little bit of help, and after about 2 years, I started to get really depressed. Here I was winning awards and going to festivals, and I realized that I wasn't making any work. Like it was just like the bureaucratic, sending and shipping and receiving and making sure that things are working properly. But I realized that the reason I got into this was because I loved to make animations, and I wasn't doing that at all. So and it was after 2 years, and it's kind of the life of a film, and I started saying, oh my gosh, is this the only thing I'm gonna make? Is this it? And so I remembered, I'm kind of, on some level, I'm kind of embarrassed of those first few films. Like the first, it's just an eye blinking, or it's really, they're very minimal, very much very little there. However, I like to show those because those, what this is, it didn't start with this. It started with this other very simple, very playful idea, and it kind of over time it morphed into something like this. So it was just knowing, it was just the idea. In the beginning, it was just the idea. And so what I did was I went back to that idea, and I said, okay, let's do a little 5-second animation, or 15-second animation, or 30-second animation, because you have to. I felt like there was this idea of like having to one up. Like I have to do better. I have to do bigger. I have to do more. And with that idea, there's this anxiety and this stress, and what that was doing was just crippling creativity. I did a 7-minute film, and it had this many awards, and it had this much success. So now I have to do a 15 or a 30-minute film, and it has to have even more awards, and it has to have even more success. And that idea, it stopped me from making anything. So when I just flushed that down the toilet, then I was able to just make and just create and just play again. And so I started doing this. I did this one animation, and it was this idea that I should start doing these little animations. So I did this animation about doing little animations, and then I kind of kept doing these little tiny animations again, just like the beginning ones, and those were just about kind of about my life and about like me on a very human level. And I realized that my life in general it's not super exciting. It's not super boring, but it's pretty average. And I realized that if I was doing animation after animation just about my life, it would get really boring really fast, and it would be a little egocentric. So I decided to try to get stories from other people. And I had this phone number on my business card that was for a phone line that I didn't even own. I didn't even have the phone hooked up. It was just this dead kind of phone line. And so I gave that number out to a couple of people, and I said, hey, can you call and leave messages on this answering machine? And they said, sure. They called and left a couple of messages, and then I took those messages and I animated those messages, and I posted them on my Facebook. And I said, hey, here's some animations that I did from people leaving phone messages, and you leave more messages. And so that was kind of the beginning of what cycled into Animation Hotline. And the Animation Hotline is playing here. There's one tonight at 9, and then there's another one tomorrow, I think at 7. And that was actually, I had done this film, it had done well, but after I started making the Animation Hotlines, that's when I started feeling like a film. I started feeling like I was actually doing something more than just playing my studio. And that one, so since then I've done 200 of these, very tiny animations. They're easier to do because they take a day or 2 days or 3 days, sometimes up to 5 days, but always, a nice short. I don't have to risk bet the farm on whether or not this is going to be a great one. I was listening to a previous speaker talk about how he gets, he comes up with an idea and then he waits to get funding for it. And if he gets funding, then he gets to do the project. And if he doesn't get funding, then he doesn't do the project. And because these are small and minimal, when I get a little bit of money in my pocket, I'll spend some time and I'll do a couple. And when I don't have any money in my pocket, I don't have to do it. And it's been that way for a couple of years now. So I'm not dependent on somebody else telling me what I can and can't do. I would love to have endless financing. Don't get me wrong. If somebody said, here's a bunch of money, just do what you do, I would not say no. but it's more because I'm working it on my own. When I get sometimes I'll get money from. And right now I think there's a magazine that wants to give me some money to do 10. So we're going to do them all in politics for the next 10. I'll be about the political campaign. People are going to call in with their political stories about the candidates. So let's I'm going to show you a couple of those. I don't know. So, like I said, there's 200.
This is Werner Herzog. At the moment, I am watching whales in the Hamburg harbor. Many people are believing that in these shallow waters of the Elbe River, some sort of monsters are hiding. To find them, we descended into the unknown. We were about to make one of the greatest discoveries in the history of whales. But then it would turn out that something was weird with these creatures. When we listened carefully, they seemed to speak to us from a familiar yet distant universe. Are we today possibly the whales who look forward into an abyss of time when we watch the films of this short film festival?
So there's, like I said, there's hundreds of these.
Next message received at 12:50 a.m.
Hello. How's it going? You should come to Edinburgh because we've got a castle and the beach and a mount. It's a volcano, and we've got there are cats, but they're not. There's not really a highlight. And then we have a whiskey. We've got a few whiskies, but they're like there's more. We can get more cats if you want more cats. If you don't want more cats, that's fine.
Is that guy from Scotland or something?
So yeah, they're from Scotland, and they
Next
left that
message
message at 4
received
a.m.
at
after a long
5:52
night of
p.m.
One day I was in Vancouver, British Columbia, and I was walking down the street and this man called my name. And I turned around and he said, "Serena, I'm so happy to see you." And I didn't recognize him. And he came closer and he said, "We had an affair in Calgary." And I said, "I've never been to Calgary." And he said, "Don't you remember? We spent a few nights in a hotel and it was sweet and wonderful." And I said, "Sorry, I've never been to Calgary." And I never found out how it was to actually be my name.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it really is. It's like a mystery. And I'm friends with the Serena from British Columbia.
Actually, Serena is
Next message received at 8:10 a.m.
It's my birthday, and I woke up to probably like 70 Facebook messages. But I'm lying in bed all by myself in Mexico City. I don't know what I'm going to do today.
Don't drink the water, that is true.
Next message received 1:50 p.m.
I started to get gray really young in my 20s, and I started to diet. When I was about 35, I was married, and I said to my then husband, "You know, you never say anything nice to me." And he looked at me and said, "Okay, your hair looks like a wig." And instead of getting hurt or angry, I thought, "Oh, I guess it's time to rethink the hair." And I let the gray come in, which is not easy because first it looks like a skunk stripe of white. And I've had silver hair, as I like to think of it, for 25 years, and I'm happy with it. I like silver. And I later divorced that guy anyway.
That one was done for the New York Times. So there's like different magazines and periodicals and places that'll ask me to do some for them. And that one
Next
was
message received at 9:40 a.m.
When I was 8 years old, my mom was called into the school nurse's office because I lied. And I told them that I couldn't see a damn thing when I was getting the test done, and I couldn't see anything. The nurse said, I'm going to call Child and Family Services on you. Your daughter is blind. My mom said, she has perfect 20/20 vision. She just wants glasses.
So what these are basically from a
Next message received at 12:28 p.m.
Hi, Bob Pope here. My wife Lisa had a dream of transcendence. She was sitting in church with her mother when the whole roof of the church just disappeared. It evaporated, and the sky was stretched out above them, and the birds tweeting. And she was aware of the presence of God all around everyone. And everyone was looking up with wonder. And she turned to her mother and said, this is going to take some getting used to.
So what this is on from a creative standpoint, this is a project that keeps the soul alive. I've started, eventually I started getting commercial clients with the animation hotline and with Curse for Peace. People, were like, oh, let's try this out for our product, or let's try this out for what we're doing. And so I started getting commercial jobs. And with commercial jobs, you can't make mistakes. You have to do it right. You have to hit the budget. You have to, do what the client is asking for, and or you have to think of it on in a sales. This is my product. It might not be a product that I'm in love with. It's a product that I'm trying to sell, and I'm trying to keep the lights on in the studio. And so after doing a couple of those, you start wondering, oh my gosh, this is, it gets hard, because you're not allowed to be creative, you're not allowed to, like I said, make mistakes, you're not allowed to play, you have to do it right. And so what this is then, for, on the flip side, is that this allows me to continue to be creative. If there's something that we want to try, then we go with this animation hotline and we try it and play with it, and if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, great. It's only, we've only just invested a day or two into it. So some of them work, some of them don't. If it does work, then we can kind of take some of these techniques and apply them to the commercial jobs, because those are, those, like I said, they're on budget, time restrictions, and they don't want you to experiment on the. So it's literally kept the excitement and keeps the interest and keeps the whole active working on. So it's been a really good experience. I have one more film that I want to show, but I don't know. Is it time? We're good.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good on time?
Yeah.
Okay, this one's one that I didn't get into the film festival, but I just love it so much. It's an animated poem, and it's a little bit different style than the chalkboard style, but it's my personal favorite right now, and so it's called Hummingbird's Wings, and it's actually, there's no animation in it, even though it appears animated. It's all actually just creative editing. So we've taken some video footage and chopped it up to make it look and appear as it's animated. And I did it with someone, the writer for it. We kind of collaborated. We sat down in a coffee shop and talked about what animation is. She had no idea what animation was, so she kind of wrote a poem that was about time and time stopping, and then I made the piece showing time, but also showing this shrinkage of time. So I'll let you watch that.
Trauma survivors often remember the details of a dangerous fall or car crash to have unfolded in slow motion. Neuroscientist David Eagleton has attempted to explain this phenomenon, speculating about the possibilities it suggests for the scope of human perception. He proposes that if it were indeed possible for the mind, under duress, to slow the pace at which it perceives the movement of things around it, one could learn to see the world more sharply, as in a nature film that decelerates so as to provide clear view of the hummingbird's wings in flight. Scientific conjecture aside, the approach of my own death even now makes the
Oh, buffering.
The world lag.
So much suspense.
Maybe should we restart it?
Yeah, because then see how it's catching up finally? Yeah. Well, no, well, I mean, it's advancing a bit. So. Yeah.
Trauma survivors often remember the details of a dangerous fall or car crash to have unfolded in slow motion. Neuroscientist David Eagleton has attempted to explain this phenomenon, speculating about the possibilities it suggests for the scope of human perception. He proposes that if it were indeed possible for the mind, under duress, to slow the pace at which it perceives the movement of things around it, one could learn to see the world more sharply, as in a nature film that decelerates so as to provide clear view of the hummingbird's wings in flight. Scientific conjecture aside, the approach of my own death even now makes the world lag, and I watch the arrested picture that meant new meanings while intermittently I sleep. I lie framed in my bed. I am a portrait of myself. I am still as a corpse. There is a crack in the wall. Words come through. My eyes are fixed. A burning chariot and 5 horses. 5 smiling horses with burnished teeth. A gilded caravan coated in rust. And something else is surely coming from between the cuts and the bright white center of the sprocket hole.
Thank you guys so much. Do you have any questions?
Oh, yeah. Okay,
So,
cool.
are you DSLR?
It started out with a Canon G5 because it had the intervalometer, is what that timer was called. And in the beginning, I did everything in camera, so I would, would take all the pictures and then I would take the card out and look and see what happened. Eventually, I was actually trying to build some software that, so that I could watch what was happening and render it in real time, and then someone told me that exists. So I was like, oh great. So then I got to start using software. I used the same camera for a while. I think I jumped up to a G9, and then now I'm using Canon 6Ds for everything. It's just a much bigger picture and much more rich.
And what about editing?
I edit everything in Premiere, Adobe Premiere. And then the software I use for capturing is Dragonfly. And I was using iStopMotion when I was kind of learning. iStopMotion is it's a little more basic and a little more user-friendly. And Dragonframe is just slightly more complex. But if you know iStopMotion, it only takes about an hour to adjust to the Dragonframe. But Dragonframe might also be a kind of a jump to right after that. So my suggestion is iStopMotion.
So, oh, sorry.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, about that animation hotline. A friend from school, she actually sent a message to the animation hotline.
What was the message?
I don't know. It was a few days ago, and when she mentioned about it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this would be awesome." I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'll talk to you privately about it though.
Okay. I've got it. They all come up on my phone now. Check
Cool.
them, like, on the fly.
First off, your stuff is gorgeous. I absolutely love it. I think it's beautiful. I was interested in the development. I mean, artistically, your style seems to be evolving and changing. And how do you work with that process? Are you just constantly exploring new approaches? Do you use projections when you do drawings? Like, how do you get that?
For Prayers for Peace, that was almost all, it's called rotoscoping.
Okay.
Whereas you shoot some video footage and then you project that. In my case, it was projected on top of the slate, and then you basically trace the image. I did that technique for Prayers for Peace solely because I wanted the viewer to. I didn't want anybody to get hung up like, oh, that was a weird image, or oh, that, because my stuff, like my faces don't look like faces, or like, oh, that's an eye, that's a mouth, like that's a face, and people are like, oh, that's not a face, that's scary. So I wanted it to be very digestible. So for Prayers for Peace, I did rotoscoping, and it's such a great technique for stuff that if I want something to look highly rendered and really look like the thing that it is, a lot of times I'll trace the image or use this rotoscoping technique. I think it was, I forget when I first used it, but it's been around since it came out.
Well, I was just going to ask about sound. Like, so you started, one of your early ones was, to music, and then now you're animating to these stories. But do you prepare them and work in advance? With the.
Great question. The sound for me, for me, the sound and the story is kind of everything. Like that is the piece. It's this narrative of the story, and I'm telling it almost entirely through the audio, and then the visuals are almost like buffers. They're just kind of like little pieces of candy that kind of keep you engaged and keep you watching the film. And but in that same respect, no, I rarely, at least for like my personal pieces, I rarely play with the audio. There was a while that I was doing a collaboration with these sound guys, and I would send them the audio file, and they would clean it up, and they would put some sound effects behind it, and it looked like it sounded like a movie trailer, and it was like, and the process, it kind of slowed everything down so much that it was like, I like to make stuff and get it out and like let people do what they want with it, but then start over planning of these things is kind of what makes it gets stale. It gets if every single shot is planned out, it kind of feels that way. At least it does to me. I don't know what the viewer is seeing, because I'm not that person. That's why I love these film festivals, because I get to sit in the room and kind of like watch when people are squirming in their seats, or watch what people are responding to. And honestly, you never know. Like, I've been in rooms where Prayers for Peace was like just dead air, and then I've been in rooms where you really feel like the emotion, you feel like it's really there's a connection. So it's the same with animation hotline. Some people laugh, some people don't. That's always
Wonderful. Thank you. Oh, that's great. Now let's go watch some movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like a pretzel. But I'm not salty. Is it raining outside? I keep hearing clear power on my phone. I thought you were looking for something there for a while.
Okay.
No, because I usually
What? For the.
and I just realized I
Okay.
because I was playing with that or